Check 1 2, check 1 2. We're back in the stream. You know what I'm saying? Welcome back to Diasporas Media, man. We're here. We got a lot to cover today. Kenya is on fire, figuratively, literally, in many ways. Kenya's going crazy. This finance bill is the talk of the town, right? But and Ruto just recently, as of today, stated that it will be withdrawn. And a lot of people are claiming Gen Z is. Thanks so much, Selena, for letting me know that we're loud and clear. We're back, so let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and give the professor a call, and let's get busy. Let's get busy. So, without further ado, let's go ahead on and call the professor real quick. Make sure everything works. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear the professor. Let's do this real quick. Give me one moment. All right, let's try that. Hey, what's good, Dad?
Yes, Victor.
How you doing, man? We're live. We're getting into the topic for the evening. We're already into it, so just thanks for coming on, and I wanted to lock in on some of the stuff we started last time before we were rudely interrupted by the audio. But thanks for joining as usual. And what before we dive into it, what do you think is the context that people need to know um, concerning Kenya and this finance bill before we really get into the meat and potatoes of the topic?
Thank you very much. And I want to welcome everybody to today's episode. Basically, what I want us to discuss today is not what has already been covered in social media. I want us to discuss something that is more critical than that. This thing we are seeing happening in Kenya, what is it? Is it a protest movement? If it is, what are they protesting against? Secondly, if it is not a protest movement, then what it is and what are its objectives? We figure out those two things, then we'll be able to discuss all the other things. And I can tell you, it has absolutely nothing to do with the finance bill. Even if the finance bill was withdrawn like it was today, you still find the agitation will continue, and tomorrow, unless many of them are stopped by the military, they will continue in larger numbers, meaning that that is not what this thing is, and what they stated as their objectives is not what it is. So we need to figure out exactly what is it and what are its objectives.
Okay, so are you saying that this this movement, right, for lack of a better term, has no objectives and has no leadership?
I didn't say that, but they are trying to make it look like that. If it was,
Who is they?
a, of course, there are always shadows behind every political undertaking. There are still everything you see anywhere in a democracy in terms of protests.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody protesting is just a puppet of the holder of that string. There is always somebody behind it. If you can unmask that somebody or that group or that number of somebodies, then you would know what the objectives are and you'll be able to analyze it better.
So, do you think that this is a bad thing?
Whether it's a bad thing or not, that one I leave to the ones who also believe in God. My question is, what are they up to? What are their objectives? Is this just a protest movement, or it is a social movement that has very clearly identified political ends, and then we discuss what are those ends?
Okay.
But I can tell you it has nothing to do with the finance bill.
And why? So people are out there that has nothing to do with the finance bill. All these people are up in arms about something they don't understand.
Oh, but that is true of every social movement or every protest movement. The average person has no idea what it is. Have you read Animal Farm?
Yes, I've read
Even when
Animal
they were
Farm.
shouting, even when they were shouting, two legs bad, four legs good. The ones who were shouting the most were chicken. And then they look at themselves and for the first time, they realize they have two legs. Then they
No,
start
I
justifying.
understand
Then
the
there's just,
concept, right? I'm
yes,
saying that from your perspective, we're gonna have to dive into it a little bit more because generationally,
this is a continuation of the elections. This is a continuation of that group that was not, number one, happy with Ruto being president, and number two, would have been pursued by the guys who would have lost. I want us to premise this within not just a historical context, but its proper political context. This, as we have been saying, is another indicator, a very clear indicator of the failure of democracy and some of the shortcomings of democracy that were not anticipated by the crusaders of democracy.
mm,
And to get us started, this is a question of a democracy or a democratic undertaking, in this case, an election, that does not give you an outright winner. And especially you combine that with a system like Kenya's, which is the so called first past the post. The winner takes everything, the loser loses everything. So, what you are seeing is not people protesting about a finance bill that is putting taxes on cars they don't have, taxing eggs they don't even eat, taxing diapers and they have not even married, they have no children. It has nothing to do with that. This is a perpetuation of what came immediately after the elections and the results were announced, where the winners had all the spoils and the winners, even the little they had under the previous regime, is lost. This is the context in which you need to look at that. And then now, what you are seeing, this immediate thing, is now people with all sorts of grievances joining into this bad wagon and demanding or seeking a solution to their grievances. And this is why I've told you the finance bill has been withdrawn. Then, if it was the problem, we should not expect people in the streets tomorrow. We should expect them coming to a table someplace to negotiate over what next. But they will not come to the table because they have nobody to go to the table. Because the ones to go to the table are still they are still in the shadows, because that was not their objective. This was to start something going, and then they start the agitation until the end of it. The shadows are either left to determine who becomes Kenya's next leader, or they cause chaos, like in Sudan. They cause chaos, like in Libya. They cause chaos where they will make their money, or they control the warlords that control the means of production.
I understand. Okay, so you're saying that these protests are essentially um led and headed by shadows that even the
Shadows,
protesters
exactly.
themselves may not understand or know who or why.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a very interesting thing Uncle told me about the other day, and he was saying that a lot of these Gen Zers live with their parents, right? And their parents
They
are
are
the
still living in
ones
their basements with their parents. They have never paid a bill.
and their parents are the ones who are looting these funds in order to support them, which is quite interesting,
You see,
right?
the thing that comes to mind, the things that comes to mind is the moment immediately I came to America, I witnessed a very interesting protest.
Mhm.
College students protesting about cruelty to chicken in Purdue.
Mhm.
And then when they have protested that and closed or caused disruptions in the production, the following day they demonstrated against inadequacy of chicken in supermarkets. And they never saw the connection between the protest about the cruelty to chicken and the chicken that they have in their fridges. They didn't know that that chicken has to be beheaded.
Yeah, man. I That's something that I noticed when I was in Kenya with you too. I was like, man, you guys can just live with your parents this long and everything's just all good. Cause that's not like how that's not how it is here, right? That's not how it is here. And it was very interesting to see that because the perception is that life is far better in America, right? And life is far easier. But you know, that's not how it is at all. And it's in
Again, you are
fact far.
missing the point. Again, you are missing the point.
What do you mean?
The average boy you are looking at here
Hmm.
might not want to live with a parent because number one, the two parents are not even living together. So now, when it comes to that, which parent do you want to live with? And secondly, you want to map your own life independently. Doesn't mean that living alone is any better than living with your parents. It's just the choice. If I were at home, I would still, and I worked in my local area, I would still be living in the same compound with my father. It doesn't mean I'll be technically joyriding, but the family unit is important. So that is an element that somebody looking from the outside might not recognize.
I understand. Okay. So then with all that in context, right? What is it
Mhm.
that young people should you know, what is it that young people should take from this perspective then when it comes to the protest? Because they're out there for a reason. Whether or not they know these reasons is a different story. And clearly that's your first point, which is that they don't know why exactly they're out there. So from your perspective, can you speculate or give a little bit of insight as to then if it's not about this bill, why would they possibly be out there? What would the shadows intent, the alleged
The,
shadows intent be?
but you see, again, the shadows are not a unitary, holistic unit. They have also their own differences depending on their political inclination or depending on their social standing or even sometimes depending on their ethnic background.
Yeah,
All these are different. So each one of them is still playing all the others. But that is, anyway, those polling and tagging and howling is what politics is about. Politics is about the management of all these different elements and then to form a large enough coalition that is coherent enough to be able to govern. What you are seeing in Kenya, on one hand, is just the failure of government itself. Those who were given the mandate have no clue on what they were given a mandate to do. And the ones who gave them the mandate have absolutely no clue what they gave them a mandate to do. And then we have also a judiciary that doesn't seem to know what it is also supposed to adjudicate about. So it is a confused mix that is getting us to where we are now. Because if somebody was protesting about the high cost of living that person will be the last person to ban a government institution, because once all this dust settles, the first amount of money available will go to reconstructing that institution and that building that has been banned. Meaning that if before the protest there was less money, then there will be more money. There will be much less money because now it has gone to a structure that was already in existence. Secondly, if they are fighting against corruption, banning it only gives these cartels another opportunity for another large contract where, to ensure through corrupt practices that they have gotten more than they should have. So everything they are doing is counterproductive to their claims. And if they knew, and this is why I'm asking the question, can they tell me what their objectives are? So that now we engage on number one, are those objectives obtainable? And secondly, is the strategy they are adopting one that can give them those results they are looking for? Because without knowing what they want, you cannot tell how effective their strategies are. I'll give you a basic example. If you wanted to go to a point you have not defined, and somebody is asking you whether using an aeroplane is sufficient to get you there, if you do not know whether the place they are going there is an airfield, how will you tell whether the airplane is an ideal instrument to get them there? If you don't know how far it is, and somebody is asking you, can we effectively get there with a bicycle? You don't know how far the destination is. If it is from Nairobi to London, then you tell them if you have 10 to 12 months, yeah, it is an effective one. But if you want to get there tomorrow or the next week, then it is not. There are certain basics you need to have to engage in. And my basic is, what is their objective? And that is why I prefer something with a leader, because you can ask the leadership, what are your objectives? Any other movement, any other protest is very, very good at destroying, but it is not equipped at all to construct. So if they are telling me that their aim and their objective is to destroy Kenya, then having them in the streets tomorrow will be a very effective strategy towards that. If that is what they want, and they have co-opted the judiciary, removing the military from the streets, then is advancing that. But anybody who wants a Kenya after the demonstrations, after the protests, it is important to engage and ask them this basic question: what are your objectives?
I
And then we
understand.
can engage.
I understand. Right there's a there's a lot of truth in what you're saying. Not to mention it's purely logical, right? Um, but one can also argue, especially one of my generation, the millennials, and the generation after me, the Gen Zs. One can argue that all of this logic you're asking Gen Z to employ when it comes to their tactics, right, is logic that could have been used to fight the corruption that they're outside protesting in the first place, right? So I find it very funny that there is a considerable amount of critique for how Gen Z and young people are supposed to process the mistakes of the elders. But
Thank you very much. Let's even get there.
mhm,
That is how you are looking at it.
mhm,
But now it is good that we belong to a different generation. Did the Gen Zs give us independence?
no,
Did the Gen Zs give us a multi-party system?
no,
All those were given by the previous groups. But I can tell you for a fact, when we fought for independence, we still had a Kenya that was governable the following day. when we clamored for multipartyism, there was a Kenya that was there that was governed the following day. Let these Gen Zs guarantee us that when they are given what they don't even know they are agitating for, that there will be a Kenya tomorrow. And we can tell how there is not going to be a Kenya tomorrow when they ban parliament. The experience of the French Revolution will tell us this. It is like a drug. You need to ban more the following day and much more the following day until they find they have actually banned their mothers' houses, because that corruption goes back to their homes. Remember, they are saying we caused it, and we are their parents. We are the ones who have everything. These things didn't disappear to thin air. They are in homes. So if somebody, before they go to the demonstration tomorrow, let them engage in an honest discussion with their parents. How much do you make? Show me your pay slip. And if the pay slip says I earn less than 1,000, if you have piped water in your house, if you have a flush toilet in your house, if you have a car or two in your house, you know your parents are corrupt. Let's use that as a litmus test.
That's brilliant. I actually think that is brilliant, right? Because then
that is
that
how my
brings.
generation is brilliant, and that is why we are telling them they are behaving like chicken without heads, and we are not apologizing.
Look. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying
No,
that
I didn't say you say.
I'm saying that you want a group of people to behave a certain way, right? In response to a way that you yourselves behaved, right? And so it's a very interesting question, because yes, you may the people who actually fought for the independence are not in power. So
They're not in power.
and a lot of them are dead and disenfranchised, yes, and broke. That was your generation who also did that. So you can be like, all right, this generation is fighting, yada, yada, yada. But everybody's on that same playing field. Whereas,
Victor,
hang on. Let me finish. You have to let me finish the point. I'm saying the same way it's difficult to identify a leader for Gen Z, it's also difficult to identify people who are willing to sell the movement, like your generation. Right. And so I'm not saying that you're incorrect. I'm saying that same level of critique when it comes to the mistakes that were made in the past still needs to be an even level, where it's not. Because yes, I get that they're directionless, but having direction with corruption versus unity without it are arguably just as negative or just as positive. So I'm saying that.
And what makes you think those are the options that we have? Those are the options
not
that
saying those are the options that
intellectually
we have.
dishonest Gen Zs are giving us.
I'm saying that those are I never mentioned any options. I mentioned states of mind. Those are the two states of mind.
But I'm saying those are not the only states of the mind.
Okay,
there
so
are more than that.
What are the other ones?
Let's start with the fighters. Mm-hmm. Always, everywhere, the mm-hmm. Buffalo Soldiers are the fighters, and much of them, they have no brain other than fighting. So once they finish the fight, people who have no idea how to fight, but they have an idea about governance, they take over. But now the problem always comes that when those people who have an idea about governance are beholden to the Buffalo Soldiers, whose brain is only to destroy and kill and to dismantle, and they want to be in charge of this. And then secondly, those people who are well trained in governance, they behave like everybody else who is driving a bus. Whether your bus has a thief, or it has a robber, or it has a pilot, or it has, you have a duty and a responsibility to take all of them to the destination. But now your generation and generation Gen Zs, they are creating a make-believe world. Remember, these are people who will not interact on one-on-one, but then they go on, when they go virtually, they start now dating. Then when you meet the person, you find the person doesn't have the qualifications you needed or the qualities you needed. This is now the generation that is tired of humans, now are going to create avatars to interact with them and to represent them. And these are the ones that want us to give them the instruments of statecraft? Absolutely no. I still want a human face. I still want to interact with my fellow humans. And for sure, I want to interact with a physical Kenya, not a virtual one.
Right.
So let's have those basics
All right.
very,
No,
very
no, no.
clear.
Those are clear, right? So there's still a contradiction.
Yes, life is a contradiction.
When you say democracy is a failure
Mhm.
and that it needs to begin anew with
No, not a new. We
no,
need a new system.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There needs to be a new system, right?
Mhm.
Excuse me, a new system that Africa and African countries can adopt that take into account their ethnic groups and their various differences, right?
They already have it.
In what way?
They believe in God. If God was not a dictator, if the God of the Christian world was not a dictator, they would be challenging him.
But
If the God of the Muslim was not a dictator, they would be challenging him. The only reason why they are not challenging him is because he starts his commandment by saying, I am a jealous God. Thou shalt not have any other person. You try to do it like
allow me
demonstrating
this.
against
Allow me
me,
this.
I'll
Allow me
cut your
this.
heads.
But listen, right? Listen. The shout out to Henry in the chat. You can't create this new system without the old one being gone. If this is a way for that old system to be gone, then how is it antithetical or against what it is that you see best for Africa?
But you see, and that is why I'm telling you, I want to be given an objective. You see, what we were going to experience, and this one I had already predicted. By yesterday evening, we were going to have a president declare a kind of an emergency somewhere. Either it is a security emergency or a state of emergency, and bring an element of the military. The military was going to establish some order. Then now when we take from there, either a civilian Ruto becomes a despot, becomes an authoritarian leader backed by the military, or with the time they realize, no, this guy doesn't know how to govern, let's put a military guy there.
So someone
And
in
you
the
see
chat,
from there, we start going the Traore way.
someone in the chat says, we don't want, shout out to Henry. He says, we don't want leadership because the government has a way to suppress and compromise leaders. Right.
You see, again, that is a delusional person. How do you govern without a leader?
Very true. Very true.
Democracy, the democracy about being the ruled by the majority, other than just existing in delusional minds, there is not a single time where you find 1,000 people ruling over one person. It can't be.
Right. Right.
So we must have a leader. The old theories of every organization, and government is one of the biggest and the largest organizations. Every organization has oligarchical tendencies, where a group of people in a hierarchical way form, and the one at the very top, or those at the very top, are the ones that will govern. And as long as there is a way in which that top can be replenished in a meritocracy way, then you are okay.
I understand. So that's something that I agree with. I 100% agree with that. How do you get to this state of collectively educating a people enough that they will respect, honor, and fight for a meritocratic um, way of transferring power, especially when they're transitioning from a democratic one?
Ask me a more basic question. In Kenya, what is the way out?
In So
And
in Kenya,
the way out is,
no, hang on,
yes.
because you want you're blaming masses for being stupid, right?
Mhm.
While also at the same
Which is
time,
an oxymoron anyway.
exactly, right? Which is and it's not an oxymoron, it's just redundant. Um,
Mhm.
but the you're blaming masses for being uh stupid essentially, right? Whereas on the other end, and the other hand, there's this need for leadership and a need for change, right? So if Kenya was to get both, where there is a Kenya to govern tomorrow and
Mhm.
these protests work together, what would that look like in your eyes?
The best example of how to do that, I would refer you to one of the greatest leaders who have ever existed, Otto von Bismarck, about the unification of Germany. He identified all the things that needed to be done and the sequence in which they needed to be done. We need to do exactly those two. And if you identify, and the most important will be the sequence. The biggest problem in Kenya today are the MPs, the members of parliament with pig heads. Number one, they are the largest consumers of Kenya's GDP. Number two, they are the most corrupt. And number three, they are among the stupidest. So we eliminate them. And what we had started doing the other day was correct. Let's ban them. Let's just completely eliminate them, that we do not have anybody fighting to be there. And if we can exist 2 years without them, we'll not lose anything legislatively, but we will save a lot of money. Then from there, we go to their sons, the members of the county assemblies. And because they will have seen what we have done with the members of parliament, when we tell them to resign, they will resign and look for jobs or go back to school. Then when you do that, now talk to the president. And because the president will have seen what you have done with members of parliament, the president will sit down with your representatives and you'll have a Kenya that might not work well. Remember, we are talking about a cancer. You might remove the tumor. In fact, even if the cancer has not spread, you still remove the tumor. But that wound and that operation will take long to heal. So I don't want anybody to buy this Gen Z bourgeois stupidity in assuming that there's something that can be done, that Kenya will be on the right track tomorrow or the next one. As long as the Gen Z will still be the voters, and as long as they will continue voting the way they have voted historically, then even if we eliminated this, we'll still get the same crappy leaders, because Kenyans want crappy leaders. I keep on telling Kenyans that if Obama came, if Barack Obama came to contest for the presidency, or even a governor, or even a member of parliament anywhere in Kenya, he might not even be number 3, because they like corrupt leaders, they like crappy leaders. It is the Kenyan voter who is the problem, not the guy who knows they are a problem and reinvents themselves to fit whatever crazy idea they have of a leader. I keep
Every
on telling you.
every single argument you're making though, while it makes sense, it has an equal and opposite counter argument that holds just as weight. Like for example, that holds just as much weight. Like the voting argument. Can you say Kenyan voters are the problem, but
yeah, they are the problem.
but voting and the counting of votes has been
No,
wrong and corrupt for almost every election?
no, they are not.
Oh, they're not now all of a sudden?
No, no. I'm telling you, that is not the problem.
So it's a problem, not the problem.
You see, the normal Kenyan has a problem with something called development. And they elect their leaders for whatever level to bring development to their localities. And the Kenyan's definition of that development is the person I'm going to elect goes to Kenya, steals from Kenya, and brings it to me. That is the person I will elect as the best representative. And everybody does the same. And then while initially, because there was a lot to distribute, those who were elected could just sit on a table and distribute it, more like the way the partition of Africa was done, where you give this to that and that to that. Now, those who are contesting to be the ones who are going to fight for their localities from Kenya, they have become so many and so greedy that their stomachs are so much that sometimes even the entire portion of their locality is not enough. And that's why you find even now within the table itself, there are struggles and fights because those at the table, they still want to eat the others who are at the table. That is how greedy they've become.
So, how do you? We're going back to something, man. You have talked about a lot, right? Which is, it doesn't matter if the mindsets of the people are not different. And this
Yep.
is why I stated that the childhood curriculums are where things need to start, because if, like, Gen Zs were children just yesterday, right?
Yes.
And had these curriculums been in place, a lot of these problems would be gone, right?
No.
Um,
No.
again, you can't say no, because that's not something that is proved yet. It has to be tested first. And China tested that and it worked. So I'm saying that
No.
where it's
No.
been
No.
tested,
No.
it's
But
been it's
China
been
is a
correct.
dictatorship. China is a dictatorship.
Yeah, but what caused and helped the dictatorship to thrive was the fact that they were actually investing in the growth and the development of young people.
Exactly. But the starting point was the dictatorship, not the curriculum.
I know, but a dictatorship is
The sequencing is
overthrown.
very important.
I get that, but I'm saying essentially, right? And even before China's current dictatorship, that model of investing in young people, because you can even take that away from China. Let's look at Japan then. Japan did the exact same thing, and it had better national outcomes. National outcomes are directly related to the quality of education, because then that leads to development. You can't have development in a city without the development of the people. Otherwise, you have arrested development with the people, you're going to have arrested development with the nation, right? You're seeing that with America right now. It wasn't necessarily because the democratic process was that bad. America used to develop faster than every other area because of how much development and resources they allocated to the workers of the future, to the leaders of the future, to the people who.
No, no,
What do
no,
you mean,
no.
no?
America developed under the backs of blacks.
America got its particular financial edge using free labor, but whenever it came to the inventions and the other aspects of Black America during free Black America, right? A lot of those inventions came from the general consensus being that you need to teach kids skills prior to them being 16 years old, prior to them being 18 years old. The other elements of the country were different, right? And contributed. But I'm saying that when it comes to how they raise children and how they raise people to be skilled or to have a skill or to take the skill of their father, that was across cultures. Only in modern Western world are we seeing the destruction of skilled labor when it comes to this, right? So the political doctrines versus the development of skills with the development of humans are conversations that are parallel and may intersect at times, but regardless of the political system that was present, the development of the actual children and the people that were there was something that was so common in society it was hardly talked about. So that's what I'm saying is the biggest difference between Western society and uh and the old frame of political systems, right? But go ahead, man. Go ahead.
You see, when you are led by a corrupt elite,
Mm-hmm.
An elite that converts public resources for private gain. It doesn't matter what education system you have. As long as that is the elite you have, the result will be exactly the same. And that is one common thing that seems to run across Africa. So that element of it and school curriculum, they are not in any way related. It is the quality of the elite, the ruling elite, and what they do with the resources. Because you cannot understand a situation where today, if you had an A grade, if you had an OA student, and you wanted to become a nurse because you have a desire to help the elderly, you will not be admitted to a government program. They will tell you you are qualified to do a degree program, you qualify to do something else. That is not a function of anything that we are fighting for. That is a function of the kind of leaders that we have who have absolutely no idea how to run a government. And as long as those are the leaders we'll continue having, then we're not going to have any better country, Kenya, even if whatever the Gen Zs want, they get. And I'm not seeing how that will be corrected by them being in the streets. So let's separate these many things. They are in the streets. Being in the streets, the only effective way when you go to the street is when you get to the street, you act so badly and so forcefully overnight that tomorrow everybody comes to the table, you get your demands addressed, you go back to do your normal thing. The moment you make street behavior your occupation, you become a social movement. And a social movement, when it gets a life of its own, then it thrives on chaos. So it makes sure that systems do not work because the ones who make a living in the streets have to continue making a living.
Very true. Wow. Very true. It creates an entirely different economy.
Exactly. And
I
that is why I'm
understand.
saying that these guys tell us what their objectives are. We engage at that level. If we agree with them, then we support them to achieve them. But I cannot support somebody I don't know what the end game is. And especially somebody, number one, who just survived in school through what we call Mwakenya,
I already know.
or the pre-Matiangi or post-Matiangi, that the same parents, the corrupt parents are the ones who got examination leakage to them. The same parents are the ones who got them admitted to these elite schools. The corrupt parents. So they are thinking that corruptness is outside there, but they don't see it when it is in their homes.
I see. I see. What else would you tell? Let's say you're William Ruto, right?
Mhm.
Um Not that you would have made any decisions similarly to how he would have, but let's say you get to meet a leader of this movement. Um
Mhm.
and you were to have a public sit down in front of Kenyans on a national platform. What would you
I will tell
tell
him
this
to go
leader?
home.
Mhm.
I will tell him to go home. They are likely to have a better life by going home because going home assures them, number one, they are alive. Number two, it assures them that they will have all their limbs. And number three, it assures them that the systems in the country will be functioning, even in that non-optimal way. Because what they are leading, what they are agitating for, if it becomes successful, it will take away everything they had. And I would rather repair a leaking roof than destroy a house and then I don't have enough resources to have a house with complete walls, leave alone having a leaking roof.
Wow. So you're
And
saying
I do
you're
not
saying
know.
that they're cutting off their nose to spite their face.
No, I like to put it more crudely than that. They are no different from the intellectually lazy boy who reads that judges are lenient on orphans. So he kills the parents and then goes to cry in court. Oh, I am an orphan, you must be lenient to me because that is what the Constitution says.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
So this movement to you is a social movement that is
It is
liable
a social
to
movement.
make Kenya worse than it is better.
Worse. We already see, on Tuesday we were better off as a country than we were on Wednesday night. I can guarantee you tomorrow, if we have more than 100,000 people outside protesting on Friday, we'll be worse off than we were on Thursday. If it continues to next week on Tuesday, Kenya would still be worse off. And every single day, I can guarantee you, we'll be going back more than a year economically.
Really?
Yes.
How do you prove that mathematically with an example?
But I've been a political scientist. These are the econometrics that we've done. The election of 2007, if it never occurred, Kenya in 2013 was worse off than it was in 2007 at the beginning of it. And it was all caused by the events of that one election. The fighting, the burning, the almost ethnic conflict that almost eliminated Kenya as we knew it took place as a result of just one general election. Without it, we didn't get any better leaders. In fact, we still had the same leaders we had the previous ones. Kibaki was still the leader. So we could have just said, let's just screw this thing up. Let's just continue with that. We'll save 2 billion US dollars on just carrying out the election, which is not likely to change anything. So if we had just done that, Kenya would have been 10 years ahead than it was in April 2008. So that is the basis of what I'm saying. In fact, even saying every day we get back a year is an understatement.
Wow. Wow. So you think Gen Z should go home?
They should go home and find a job to do or continue living in their mother's basements.
It's a lot of smoke, man. It's a lot of smoke. This is an interesting take. Because no matter what, right? On one end, there needs to be a new system. On the other end, you're saying that it's far better to come home to a house that has a leaky roof than it is to,
to have no house.
To have no house.
You know, when it is not raining, you don't even notice that. You still get to cook, you still get to sleep. Even when it is leaking, you still need to put a pot where the leakage is, and that is solved. You shelter yourself from protesters.
Yeah.
But without it, you are just a wild animal, exposed to the elements. But I'm not saying that going home is the end of it. They have already made a point. They have made a point that I do not think it could have been made any better. They have already made that. Let them accept the wins that they already have. Demands for change, they are not unilinear. Sometimes they regress. Sometimes this thing is a matter of one step forward, two steps backwards. But if you are intelligent enough to know when you're about to make the two steps backwards and you just reverse and you start walking backwards, the two steps backward become a forward. When you are standing at the top of a steep cliff, sometimes you are better off defining progress in terms of steps backwards than just committing a suicide by just taking another leap forward.
Very true.
And leadership is the ability to know where you are in relation to where you want to go and calculating every other step, not existing as part of a mobocracy, and then defining that, oh, yesterday we achieved this, so tomorrow we must go further. And then you come to realize it was a circular thing. The further you went, the nearer you were to your starting point.
Yeah. So, there's a couple people in the chat, right? So shout out everybody who's so active. This has been one of our most active streams. And we got some
Of course, I'm
great game.
provoking them.
Somebody says,
Of course, I'm provoking
shout
them.
out Cuz, he messaged, I completely disagree with Professor's point of view, considering that their generation continued with perpetuating tribalistic voting, and we are currently in this due to that. Secondly, they also voted the dynastical regimes that have ended up looting and stashing the funds in offshore accounts, right? And that's a
Tell them to put their names. Tell them to put their names in the chat, and I'll tell you for a fact. If they thought they are running away from tribalism or ethnicity, how comes they have an ethnic name? They should do away with their, first of all, the biggest identifier of them as
that wasn't his point.
It is.
That wasn't his point.
What was his point?
His point was that the ethnic fighting was started by you guys, not that the ethnicities need to be done away with.
Oh, when you say you guys, what do you mean?
Your generation. Your generation.
Oh, it wasn't my generation. In fact, initially I used to think it was my generation.
Dad, 07,
until my
07,
two children.
The Gen Zs were children in 07. So
now I will let
it couldn't have been that.
Now I'll let you. Now I'm the one to tell you. Let me finish.
Mm-hmm.
I did my PhD on the management of ethnicity and ethnic conflict, and I keep on telling people it was caused by a fight that was in my house between my son and my daughter, who have grown up in America. One saying, you cannot identify yourself with my father because he's a boy, I'm a boy, I belong to the father. You are a girl, you belong to the mother. And we just happen to be from two different ethnic groups. Those are people who had no idea what ethnicity was. Mm-hmm. Ethnicity is just an identifier. Mm-hmm. And I can assure you, like I had a conversation with the former Chief Justice, if there was a yellow person who came to Kenya, mm-hmm. they would be discriminated on account of being yellow. Mm-hmm. The moment the basis of identification is exclusion. If you were, when they use ethnicity for inclusion, there is no problem. Like now you find during the election time, almost every leader tries to define and identify their ancestry so broadly that you find a Luo like Raila will say that his ancestors were in Kalenjin land and identifies his 8th grandparent and Kalenjin's 8th grandparent as having shared a girlfriend. When this mechanism is for inclusion, you have no problem. It is when it becomes an element or an instrument of exclusion, and it always comes when we start distributing resources. The reason why I'm telling the Gen Zs to tell me what their objectives are is the moment that objective will include a determination of the president, a determination of a representative, a determination of somebody to go to the table, you will find the same divisions or similar. In fact, you'll be surprised to find, oh, you don't even follow me on Instagram. You don't follow me. There will still be something akin to the ethnic division. That is true of any time you are distributing scarce resources. You still find a way of excluding some people from the resources when you are the distributor. When you are the one determining who the distributor is going to be, you define it in such a way that as long as you are included, you exclude as many as possible so that you get a bigger share. That is not a function of ethnicity. It is a function of human nature.
That's a mic
and
drop.
Kenyans
right there,
are humans.
That's a mic drop right there, man. This has been a great stream, man. We're gonna keep covering this as it continues, especially tomorrow. We're gonna have some days for other African countries because the whole continent is, you know, it's it's in a state of flux right now, a state of change. Kenya's doing amazing, and hopefully we can take two steps back, according to the professor. Um, Please continue to interact in the chat. Like, share, subscribe. We know the cam goes out usually around an hour. I have a new cord that is coming in that will allow video stream indefinitely. So look forward to that. We fixed the audio up. Everybody says not it was loud and clear. So thanks so much, Professor. We will be sure to check back in with you guys before the end of the week. This has been an excellent stream, and shout out to everybody who's in Gen Z. Rest in peace to all the young people that lost their lives, uh, you know, protesting and doing their civic duty. And Shout out to everybody who is doing what they can to try their best to you know be involved in their Kenyan political life. And so, thank you to the professor, Professor Pops. Thanks for being here.
Yep.
This was a great
Welcome.
discussion. Looking forward to seeing how many Gen Zs get pissed off at your statements. But yeah, so I haven't had this much interaction in a while, so you should definitely keep provoking them. I now have a stake. You told me to invest in both sides. I am now investing in both sides. So if the Gen Zs are mad, that will benefit me. If they are not, it will also benefit me. So, let's just keep going. But like, share, comment, subscribe, and leave a comment for myself and the professor in the chat. And I hope everybody has a great night and have a wonderful evening.